We are live. We are live. Welcome to College Footballs. Peek around the corner with your host, Greg Flugar. We cover everything in college football because we love everything in college football. And if you do as well, please subscribe to our channel. Smash the like button if you like our content. Share the video with your family and friends if you want to support this show through a donation. Hit the $ where you make a comment and we'll get to your super chat as quick as possible. Welcome in to the studio that sits on the corner of Keith Jackson Parkway and Kurt Gowdy Avenue. Do not be afraid. Do not be afraid to be a legend inside the chat room with your comments and with your phone calls later in the show. It's been a long week. It's been a very long week in college football, an epic week, an important week. We did a live show on Saturday, on Sunday, on Monday, on Tuesday, on Wednesday, on Thursday, and out today, Friday, here at lunchtime, PATC. We knew that the final deal was going to be done, signed, sealed, and delivered. The CFP playoffs for 2026, 2031. It's done to where we know that everybody in FBS is going to have playoff access. We don't know the degree of the playoff access. We know the G5 are protected. We know the ACC and the Big 12, they're conference champions. They're getting in. According to Heather Dinich, the Big 10, SEC, the format is somewhat protected, but the final format hasn't been decided on. According to Heather Dinich, the Big 10 and the SEC, I think she used the word bulwark they have the power. Now they have the power. And it looks like 5+9 still has that traction. The momentum 5+9 looks like that's where we're going, but it hasn't been decided yet. And what does this mean for the ACC? I was on a phone call last night, and because, we all knew, the PATC community knew, we knew that this was going to get done today. And here at PATC, we were optimistic that there was going to be a playoff 2026 and beyond that kept everybody together for now. But no question about it, the power of consolidation, the economics, the Big Ten and the SEC have more power than ever. And I was in a long conversation last night, and from somebody in the industry, expect fireworks out of the ACC. More fireworks out of the ACC sometime after this March 22nd, this April 9th court cases. Because, well, we'll get into it, but the schools, if you look at Florida State, Clemson, and North Carolina, and if you look at this playoff distribution, now they're falling further behind the top of the Big Ten and the top of the SEC, the schools that have expectations that they're going to play at the highest level and compete for national championships. Not only that, but it isn't just about 2026 to 2031. Before the ACC can redo their Tier 1, the Big Ten and the SEC both are going to take another bite of the apple. They're going to redo their Tier 1, Tier 2 contracts. So will the Big 12. And going into, for the next for 2026, especially, focusing on 2026, the money advantages of the SEC and the Big Ten, they're going to be fully established over the ACC. And we're talking the top schools here in the Big Ten, SEC versus North Carolina, Clemson, Florida State, Miami of Florida. The revenue gap is going to be fully established. The SEC new contract starts, media contract, a massive one, starts July 1st of this year. This coming up year is the second year of the Big Ten's big media contract. Not only is the gap going to be well established, now it's going to grow with the playoff distribution model. But also, the student athletes are going to get paid. They're going to get paid directly by the school and or conference. And so these schools in the Big Ten and the SEC are going to be able to fully utilize their advantage. Unlike in the years past, where they may have all this money, but what are they going to do? Build another waterfall in their facility? I mean, but now they're going to pay, now it's going to really influence top-level recruiting. It's going to hurt Florida State. It's going to hurt Clemson. Their margin of error is going to shrink. It's already smaller than the other top schools in the SEC and the Big Ten, but it's only going to grow smaller. All of this changes. We've already seen Florida State do what they're doing in Leon County. There is no way. The risk when Florida State made their when they analyzed their risk-benefit analysis, yeah, kind of a tough decision. Some people thought they were a little crazy, right? The Board of Trustees thought they were a little crazy to try to invalidate the Gore. Well, all this information that has come out, Florida State, in my opinion, has a real good case. A real good case of knocking down what they're going to have to pay in the settlement. And, of course, I'm not very smart. You all know that. I'm not a lawyer, but everybody I talk to, people that I talk to, Florida State has a real good case. And Clemson's going to have that real good case. And North Carolina's going to have a real good case. And Miami and Florida's going to have a real good case. I know there's people out there who think there's no interest in Clemson, no interest in Miami and Florida. There's interest. This consolidation, this moving to a 12 to 14 team playoff in the future, and probably to 16, expanding their conference networks, the SEC and the Big Ten. Their expansion isn't done yet. The Big Ten has always planned for this. Always. You know, we at Peek Around the Corner, we reported to you all that the Big Ten, now listen, I'm going to drop a little bit of hints here, okay? But we always reported to you that the Big Ten was going to go west again after they took UCLA and USC before they went to the Southeast. We said it over and over again, and I took all the arrows on this. I got dragged over every place because people say, nah, USC, they're going to be on an island. USC doesn't want Oregon. They can shut that down, yada, yada, yada. But we knew something that most people did not. We knew that internally the Big Ten had a plan. We talked about it. We talked about it on June 30th, 2022. They had a plan. Fox Sports wanted Oregon and Washington. There were presidents inside the Big Ten that said, no, we got to go west again. Then we go east. How do I say this? There were schools, not Iowa, but pretty much everybody else in the Big Ten West, as we used to know it as, they all wanted Oregon and Washington. Nebraska wanted Oregon and Washington. President Carter of Nebraska, he is now the president of Ohio State. Remember when we said that Ohio State, Michigan, and Penn State, they acquiesced? They said, okay, but we're calling the shots on the next expansion. They are. And it's Carter that wanted expansion in the West and talked about it in public, about the ACC. He talked about the Pac-12. Remember, he said, we're probably taking 2, maybe 4. And then he talked about the ACC probably imploding. Now he's the president of Ohio State. The Big Ten's going to the South. They're going to the Southeast. And these schools know it. And they want to get in line. They want to have 2 options, the SEC and the Big Ten. And they're going to get it. There's going to be a lot of cloak and dagger. There's going to be a lot of talk. This is all coming to a head. The fireworks now is going to happen very shortly. We are being told. Again, we thought Clemson was already going to fire the shot. But buckle up, brace for impact. This is now cemented. There is no risk anymore. What's the risk? What's the risk of Clemson and others joining in? There is none. There is none. You think, just you think the Florida State Seminoles, the Clemson Tigers, North Carolina Tar Heels, they're going to be making $13 million a year on the playoff distribution. The SEC is going to be making $23. $10 million difference, $60 million, and they're already way behind. That's another $60 million. And what do you think is going to happen in 2031? When the next playoff happens. It could be a Power 2. I'm not going to lie to you. It could happen. The Big Ten and the SEC could break away. Or they may not. We're not going to lay odds on that. Not here in 2024. So many people said it was going to be happening in 2026. We had Peek Around the Corner and said, it ain't happening. And it did not happen. But we're not going to promise anything for 2031. But more importantly, nobody can promise Clemson, North Carolina, Miami of Florida, Florida State. Nobody can promise them nothing in 2031. The worst case scenario, the best case scenario for Florida State, North Carolina, Clemson, Miami, Florida, Virginia Tech, North Carolina State. The best case scenario, if they stay in the ACC by 2031, that they still have some sort of playoff access, but the money gap is going to grow even more. Because they're not going to be able to. The margin of error keeps shrinking on them. And by 2031, there is no risk anymore to pull the trigger. What are you going to do? You're going to be sued for damages? You're already damaged. For the schools that have an opportunity to get on a landing spot with the SEC and the Big Ten, the schools that have that opportunity, who want to compete, who want to have as big a margin of error as every team in the Big Ten and the SEC, there is no more risk. In fact, they have more ammunition for their argument. Now the ACC and Jim Phillips had no leverage here, but now the ACC is contractually behind again in revenue. Excuse me. There is no more risk. I had that long conversation. I can't tell you, of course, who it was, but there is no chance of no more fireworks. It's going to happen pretty quickly after what happens here in Mecklenburg County and Leon County. I'm not just saying this, guys and gals. I'm not just saying it. Again, I don't throw things out there. You know that. I have been pounding the table saying there's not going to be a breakaway that everybody was obsessed about. If I was just throwing things out there, I would have been throwing that out there daily. I wasn't the guy who threw out this ridiculous notion that there was already a media deal done for a 64-team Super League, and I don't throw things out there. I'm constantly hitting the brakes. I'm constantly hitting the brakes on all this rumors and speculation. The Big Ten and the SEC did not do all this stuff simply to be able to say at the end of the day, we tried, and then go off on their merry way. That reporting was incorrect. That reporting done by others was incorrect. But going forward, the Big Ten and the SEC now have more power, and they're going to get more and more and more and more and more. There is no risk anymore for Clemson to pull the trigger. There's nobody internally at Clemson that can make a decent argument. Why are we not pulling the trigger? And I get it. There's really smart people out there that say maybe Clemson doesn't have a landing spot. They will have a landing spot. Now, will these, I'm jumping ahead here, but in my strongly held opinion, Florida State, Clemson, North Carolina, Miami, whoever in the ACC can find a landing spot in the SEC, the Big Ten, they're taking the deal no matter what is offered. In other words, if the SEC doesn't offer pro rata, if they don't get the whole shebang, they're still taking it. If the Big Ten offers one of these schools, once they get released out of the ACC grant of rights, if they get offered the same thing as the Washington and Oregon, they're taking it. Once they can get onto a higher ground, just like how every other university has acted over the last 30 years, they're going to take it. Because 6 years down the road is coming fast. It's going to be here, and they want to be in the spot to be in the Power 2. Regardless if it breaks away from everybody else or not. There is no risk for Clemson not to pull the trigger. Clemson has been quiet this whole time, not granting interviews locally, nationally, to discuss anything about this. Those days are numbered. You don't think Clemson money perch? Yeah, we're going to be getting fireworks here real soon. March 22nd, April 9th, everyone's going to know more the lay of the land. We're always talking about the lay of the land. We're going to know more here in the second week of April. So buckle up, brace for impact. We're going to be going through Heather Dinich's and everybody's reporting today on what this new CFP model, what it all means for 2026 and 31. If you just join us, breaking news, everybody has agreed. It's a done deal, signed, sealed, and delivered. G5 is going to keep their playoff access to at least 2031. So will everybody else. Let me thank everybody who's come on in early here at the start of the show. Again, this is Friday, March 15th. We've been talking about this. We've had a live show every day. I don't know when's the last day we haven't had a live show. We had one on Saturday, Sunday. Today should be the last day for a while that the main topic is CFP 2026 and beyond. The Great Gold Rush, that story that we've been talking about since we opened up this channel in August 2022, that story is now complete for now, for today. Like, we're going to learn a little bit more as time goes on. Maybe even today about the governance structure. But we're not going to carry this story on to Saturday, Sunday, Monday into next week. Maybe parts of it if there's new information. But today we finally get to the end of the 2026 gold rush. And the 2031 gold rush, well, in between that, we're going to be talking about the 2028 looking. There's always going to be stories going on in college football. But the big story that's going to be happening here in the middle of the spring, late spring, early summer, is more fireworks out of the ACC. There is no more risk. No more risk for Clemson, North Carolina, Miami of Florida. No more. No more risk. Patrick is in the house. Jay Go Blue, James Foster, Jared Jones, Cameron B, Richard L, MG Sooner, my prof, Bill G, JD Turtle, Randy Taylor, Joaquin Morales. Don't forget to smash the like button. Wet Blanket is in the house. College Football RP. Jen is in the house. Holy smokes. Kyle Visser, Daniel Montcastle, Christopher Shannon. Friday with Flugar. I like that. Go Cats. Beat Wisconsin. Rock and Rant, my name is Jim Phillips, and I just sold my league down the river again. I don't think there was anything Jim Phillips could do about it. Brett Yormark. Brett Yormark has been playing the long game since day one of his commissionership. The ACC went from the alliance to the pledge of loyalty. And it's just not going to work out. And there's not much Jim Phillips can do about it. Now, there is a big difference between making a bunch of correct moves going forward here and a bunch of wrong moves. I get it. But fireworks is going to happen here soon. More fireworks out of the ACC. And Jim Phillips is powerless to stop it. Tumasta is in the house. Cornelius Green, Jimmy, Errol Donald has retired. Congratulations for an incredible career. Holy smokes. Out of the University of Pittsburgh. Laura Weiss, Red Raider, is in the house. Christopher Shannon, Kill Ball, Heartbreak 25. Elliot Cruz is in the house. Grateful Trojan. Tony, Tough Tony. Adam Shutt. Kirk Bender, Bo Stacker. Man, everybody is here this morning. Tony, what happened to Fox building the war chest for CFP? There was no way to get inside it. ESPN holds the rights for basically all the quarterfinals and the semifinals. They own the rights for, I think, up until 2031 for the New Year's 6 bowl games. So all Fox or Amazon could do was try to get into the game to try to get like a championship game or a first round game every once in a while during the next 6 years, and they just couldn't get in there. ESPN had exclusive rights. They put out the bid. The games, it wasn't valuable enough for Amazon and Fox to really get in there because of ESPN owning the bulwark of the content anyways. But thank you for the super chat, Tony. I appreciate it very much. Jay Chapman, Terry Kane is in the house. As for me and all Miami friends, we want out. You're going to be hearing more and more of that. Now it is cemented. Now it's a done deal. Signed, sealed, and delivered. And the fireworks are going to be happening out of the ACC. No question about it. Ricky Tungate is in the house. Lorenzo Haynes is in the house. Crab Cakes in Football. Black Rain. Dennis Hatley. Larry the GM. Taylor Mott. Go Pokes for the Canes. Let's go Canes. Derek Marie is here. Larry the GM, Alani Ted is here. Wow. Sean is here. Okay, let's get to the stories here. Let's get to the breaking news. Now, keep your head on a swivel. I've got a whole bunch of stuff coming at me left and right. Left and right. Everyone's coming out with an article. There's no way that I can keep up with it all. But let's show what ESPN is saying. This is ESPN's article of this morning. And yeah, there's a part in here that I'm going to disagree with. But I understand why ESPN is saying what they're reporting. I understand what Notre Dame is saying. But the reality is going to be a whole lot different 6 months from now. 6 months from now, there's going to be different reporting on this. All 10 FBS conferences in Notre Dame have agreed to the next college football playoff contract, which will begin in 2026 and bring the sport's postseason much closer to an expected 14-team field with guarantees for conference champions, sources told ESPN. The Memorandum of Understanding guarantees that the field will at least have 12 teams and beyond, 2026 and beyond. But sources indicate there is a strong preference for the 14-team field. Sources caution the exact format is not done. The Big Ten and the SEC will have the bulk of control over that, but others will be protected by parameters that have been put in place that can't be altered. Okay, so I read that as the following. One, the governing structure is pretty much completed. The voting structure. And the Big Ten and the SEC, when they agree on an issue, they're just going to have the ability to push things through. And so that is why ESPN is saying the Big Ten and the SEC will have bulk control over whatever format. But there are parameters. In other words, there's always going to be a team in all these conferences that are going to, the Power 4 conferences and the top-rated G5, they are going to have, they're going to be in the playoffs. That can't be stripped away. There are certain things that cannot be stripped away going forward between 26 and 2031. The commissioners in Notre Dame agreed that the conference champions from the ACC, Big Ten, SEC, Big 12, and highest ranked group of 5 champion would earn a playoff berth, and Notre Dame will have protections that will survive regardless of the ultimate format. With those ironclad guarantees, the commissioners and Notre Dame leadership surrendered the bulk of control over the ultimate format to the SEC and the Big Ten as part of the give and take, according to a source. So, basically it was G5, Notre Dame, ACC, Big 12. Okay, we got our playoff access, cool. We've got a certain amount of money coming to us. It's not going to get lowered or whatever. They have some guarantees. Cool. In return, SEC and the Big Ten, they're going to have the voting rights. They're going to have the votes, the weighted votes, to basically determine where this thing ultimately goes. And then when you look at 2031 and beyond, they're just going to get more and more power. The new CFP contract goes in hand with its expected new TV contract with ESPN. Okay, we've been through all that. The ACC schools will get about $13 million annually. The Big 12 teams, $12 million. Notre Dame's expected to get more than $12 million as well. I don't think this... Okay, here we go. This is the part that's kind of... I think this part's going to change here real quick. Notre Dame's leadership remains steadfast in its independent status and believes it is well positioned financially with its access to the playoff now and in the future, according to sources. We'll see about that. With an ACC implosion, with literally no more risk for... With ACC schools looking at the finality of all this, knowing now that the benefits clearly outweigh any risk, more and more pressure will be put on the ACC if the court case doesn't go well from Mecklenburg on March 22nd, and I'm thinking... I think the ACC better buckle up. This is all going to affect Notre Dame. As you know, in the Holy Smokes Theater, we got them at the very edge of the stage all the way. They're in the shadows, but they are on the stage. They're going to be waiting and seeing what happens here with Florida State. But they understand, they clearly understand, along with the top branded programs in the ACC, where this is heading. Okay, that's basically it for the looking clause for 2028 has been added to give the commissioners of Notre Dame a chance to reevaluate the contractual agreements based on how every league has performed to that point. There's also a clause that permits the timeline to be accelerated if there is material realignment. And we believe here at Peek Around the Corner that there is going to be material realignment. And we're not just throwing that out there. Again, of course, a lot of it depends on how the court cases go, right? And of course, we don't know exactly how that's going to go. But the effort, the incentive is growing for Clemson and North Carolina and Miami. It's not dissipating. It's growing. This is what Heather Denich has reported this morning. All 10 FBS conferences in Notre Dame have agreed to the next college football playoff contract, which will begin in 2026, and bring the sport's postseason much closer to an expected 14-team field with guarantees for conference champions. Sources caution the exact format is not done yet. In the Big Ten, and the SEC will have the bulk control over that, but there are parameters in place that cannot be altered. So, it's a done deal. Expedition Greg, the Big Ten will be expanded very soon. Will there be any bonuses for conferences based on performance? It doesn't sound like it. Or if there is, it's very, very little. Everybody, the only, if there is any, it's very, very, very little, Grateful Trojan. It was reported about a week ago that $1.2 billion of the $1.3 billion in playoff revenue was going to be base compensation, distributed no matter what happens. This amount of money to each SEC school, Big Ten school, G5 school, Big 12 school, ACC school. And then $100 million of the $1.3 billion was on performance. The reporting on since then has been a little murky. I don't know if that $100 million is still in place. Okay, let me get to some super chats. John Teal, thank you so much. Stan and Cal regret not clicking with Ohio State, Washington State now. Oregon State, I don't know what that SOSO is. I'm not sure what that means, John, but thank you for the super chat. I don't think there was anything stale Cal could have done. And I don't think there's anything Oregon State and Washington State could have done. I think they were all powerless in what's been going on. Now we know that Stanford and Cal tried to get into the Big Ten. We have people around the corner said it was Washington and Oregon that was going to get the call. California, there was no steam at all. Thank you for the super chat. John, the people thinking the SEC isn't going to add, I asked this, if the Big Ten eats Florida State, Miami, Clemson, Notre Dame, are they okay letting North Carolina State, Virginia, VT, Virginia, Pitt, Louisville, Georgia Tech, Syracuse, all going to the Big 12? Well, first of all, not all those schools would be going to the Big 12. I mean, if the SEC did not want to eat at all, the SEC, ACC is going to survive as pretty much as it is, with only the Big Ten eating. The SEC is going to eat, no question about it. And they might eat first. The SEC might eat first, second. They might eat first, second, third, fourth. We don't know. A lot of it depends on how the implosion happens. There's a lot we don't know, ladies and gentlemen. We can peek around the corner. Here at College Football's Peek Around the Corner. We know, we're telling you as much as we could possibly tell you, there's going to be more fireworks blazing off in ACC here real soon. But besides that, there's 1,000 different cloak and dagger communications going on. We know, and I mentioned this earlier, we know of a communication that happened with Clemson between somebody, third party, somebody. And in a state north of them, to a little bit to the west of them. Just like we knew about the Colorado May 7th meeting in Chicago with the Big 12. When we called it the hot bubble of action, we couldn't give you any more information. And there was only like a handful of us. Clemson has been putting a lot of work in. And it just isn't Ross Dellinger's Yahoo article that says that. Let me put it to you this way. If Clemson doesn't pull the story, doesn't pull the trigger soon, that's even a bigger story, because there's something going on that none of us understand. I'm just going to leave it at that. We believe SEC will be eating. Thank you so much, John, for the super chats. Greg Ledford. Greg, is it true Florida State was not allowed a vote on the ESPN CFP agreement? I have not heard anything about that. I have not heard anything about that. Now, I think if I remember correctly, somebody reported it was a unanimous vote in the Big 12 and the ACC. I do remember that. Now, does that mean that Florida State wasn't able to vote internally? That's a great question. If anybody's got an answer, if Jen Knoll has an answer to that in the chat, let me know. Very interesting. I appreciate the super chat, Richard. I appreciate you bringing up that question. I apologize. I do not have the answer for that. That's very intriguing. Very intriguing. Thank you so much for the super chat. Appreciate your generosity so very much. Justin Lucas, Ross Dellinger reported that. Are you saying, Justin, that Ross Dellinger reported that it was unanimous within the ACC and the Big 12? I think it was. I think it might have been Ross Dellinger. Somebody reported that. Thank you, Patrick. I wonder if there's clauses built in with the possibility of realignment. Would funds shift with each move? Grateful Trojan. I don't think they've got down. I don't think there's no way they could get down to that type of detail, because the ACC is in the room talking, right? I just think if there's material realignment, if there's realignment within the Power Four, there's a look-in. That's going to happen immediately. It doesn't have to happen. Doesn't have to wait to 2028. And it all depends on what happens. Who goes where? Does the Big 12 eat at all? There's just, and again, I'll go back to the start of the show. There is absolutely no risk. Somebody say to me, someone explain the risk of Clemson. Remember, even if you go through this process, even if Florida State goes through this process, and they get a settlement, they'll get like the court case goes pear-shaped for the ACC, and Florida State has leverage, and let's say they come to a settlement where they only pay $100 million. Well, if Florida State goes, now when they officially, which is a lot different than third-party talk, but if they start talking with the Big Ten and the SEC, and for whatever reason the country goes into depression or whatever, and there's just, Florida State doesn't get the invitation, Florida State don't have to pay that $100 million. But they know, they're just trying to get, that they're trying to establish and build an exit hatch out of the ACC. So the risk of, yeah, they're paying millions of dollars, but again, the benefit risk analysis on this is overwhelmingly for the benefit side. The risk is staying where you are. If you are a university, an athletic department that can possibly jump to the SEC or the Big Ten. I'm not talking about all the school, obviously, right? And then you got the other ACC schools who they know what's going on, and man, would they love to pocket their portion of 120, 150 million from Florida State, Clemson, Miami. They can rebuild the ACC. I don't know, guys. There's just no way that the fireworks are not going to start popping again real soon after these court cases. Thank you, Daniel. Appreciate it. I did Justin Lucas. I did see the interview, but that was an old interview. That interview was like a month or whatever old. That was Bubba Cunningham. That was not a recent interview. It was a rehashed article bringing back that interview. Bubba Cunningham, he's pretty, he's taking shots at Florida State, saying they should pay more than $500 million, some language like that. He also said, UNC, North Carolina. He gave the impression. Correct me if I'm wrong. He gave the impression that North Carolina, they don't want to be traveling all over. They don't want to be going out west for regularly scheduled competition, like a conference game. Like, that's why they didn't want California and Stanford. Well, does that mean that North Carolina doesn't like the national setup of the Big Ten? Possibly. Or at least Bubba Cunningham's. Look, Bubba Cunningham, how do I say this? Bubba Cunningham has been the athletic director of North Carolina for a very, very long time. And he and Gusowich, the former president chancellor, they've had discussions with Jim Delaney. Bubba Cunningham's had discussions with Jim Delaney for 25 years. Bubba Cunningham is not a player in this next realignment. He just isn't. No disrespect to him. Powerful athletic director, been there for a long time, North Carolina. But there has been a sea change at the University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill. You don't have to take my word for it. You can go talk to someone down there. Get on the phone. If you know anybody, there's a sea change. And Bubba Cunningham is of the old guard. There's a new guard. And that is why North Carolina is leaning SEC when the implosion happens. It doesn't mean it's official. It doesn't mean it's definite. Nope. But for right now, it's a definite lean. And Bubba Cunningham is of the old guard. So, but I did see the interview, but it was a rehash. Thank you, Richard Ledford. I appreciate again your generosity to this channel. Thank you so very much for that super chat. Holy smokes. Thank you, sir. Okay. The current president of North Carolina is a Duke guy, and that is often said in my chat, RX, and that doesn't make a hill of beans difference. The president at North Carolina is looking out for North Carolina. Not looking out for Duke. That's not how these presidents work. Sure, they're going to work on certain things. Now when it comes to athletics, and by the way, the president of North Carolina, his power, basically when it comes to realignment decisions, have been stripped. The decision really rests with the Board of Governors of North Carolina. So the president of North Carolina being a Duke guy, a Wake Forest guy, a Minnesota guy, it just doesn't mean anything. Open up those phone lines. We need to talk. Before we do that, the spotlight team of the day is LSU. Here at Peek Around the Corner. We'll go through it quick here. But LSU is the spotlight team. The previous one was Indiana Hoosiers. We've done Ohio State Buckeyes. I don't know. We've been doing a lot of them. Today is LSU. The main point here, let me go through a quick couple articles real quick. The main point of LSU that we got to be looking at is the quarterback, Garrett Nussmeier. I'm not a real believer in him. I'm all over the place on LSU. Okay? I will admit that. I've got them ranked 8 in my poll. Okay? I've got SEC teams, Georgia number 1, Texas 3, Alabama 5, Missouri 7th. I've got LSU, the 5th SEC team, but number 8 in my national poll. Way too early poll. I got Ole Miss and Oklahoma as well in the top 15 for SEC teams. I cannot figure LSU out. I cannot figure them out. I'm not. Nussmeier, is he the real deal? Here are the expectations. Again, LSU has, of all the SEC schedules for 2024, for the teams that are going to be challenging for the SEC championship, LSU has the most favorable schedule. And that is very difficult to look away. Okay? And here is an article, LSU favorable schedule, scrutinizing the Tigers' schedule offers further insight to why optimism is high. The Tigers face setbacks in the first games of the past 2 seasons, stumbling against Florida State. Great game last year. Yet 2024 opener presents an entirely different narrative as LSU is slated to face USC in Las Vegas. The Trojans grappling with the defense rebuild. Miller Moss, new quarterback. They might not be able to beat LSU, and I don't think they will. The shift sets up LSU with a ripe opportunity to start the season on a positive note. September's lineup against Nicholas State, South Carolina, UCLA, South Alabama, and then listen to their conference schedule. Well, it doesn't go on. Okay, LSU hosts Alabama. So they've got Alabama at home. They got Vanderbilt on the schedule. If you look at their schedule, it is quite favorable. If you look at it, 10-2 might be their floor. The quarterback room. Here's another article. Again, I need to see more of Nussmeier. I'm not really Garrett Nussmeier. I'm still not a believer in him. Everyone's been watching LSU football for the past 3 years or so knows who Gus Nussmeier is. He's a Louisiana boy, patiently waited his turn. One of the best backups in the nation. He's finally going to get his chance. Right? Ricky Collins is in the quarterback room. A.J. Swan. A.J. Swan is the transfer from Vanderbilt. He's got 2 years of eligibility. Very interesting that A.J. Swan went to LSU, I think because he thinks he has a chance to beat Nussmeier out. The big question, two big questions. One, the running back room. The running back room. It's LSU will be thin in spring practice. Josh Williams and Caleb Jackson are the only 2 scholarship running backs on the roster. Caleb Jackson sounds like he's going to be RB1, but he just carried the ball 31 times last year. So there's question marks on the running back situation. But it is the defense of LSU Tigers. They weren't that good last year. They got Perkins coming back. They're going to have to try to unleash him. But they weren't very good last year. Brian Kelly switched out the whole defensive staff. He brought in Blake Baker, the defensive coordinator of Missouri, who's had great success. Blake Baker knows the state of Louisiana. Baker was the linebackers coach a few years ago with LSU. He was on the coaching staff with Louisiana Tech. He knows the state of Louisiana. Great success at Missouri. They snatched him away from the Missouri Tigers, and they replaced the whole defensive staff. The schedule, favorable. The quarterback position, the running back is thin. Caleb Jackson, in his 31 carries, if you watch his highlights, 31 carries last year, he did have some big moments. He's got the pedigree. He's got the class. He could be a superstar. Unknown. The defense that LSU has been known for so long was all screwed up last year. I watched a LSU Sports Insider. Go check out that YouTube channel, that podcast. And they were talking about all the communication issues that the defense had last year. Well, he should solve that, right? Brian Kelly made the right aggressive move to switch it all out. Now, is it going to take some time? Garrett Nussmeier, they start against USC. I think LSU wins that game. I've got LSU number 8, but I've got such a wide variance on LSU. It could all implode on them. Getting A.J. Swan, again, I'm all over the place on LSU. Harold Perkins, I've got them number 5 in the SEC, number 8 in the country. And that schedule, though, is favorable. So I got them squeezing into the playoffs. Let me know how wrong I got it on the LSU Tigers. Let's open up the phone line. So I've got them doing pretty good, but I see a lot of landmines. I see a lot of landmines for the LSU Tigers. Let's, not the schedule. Quarterback, running back. Okay. Let me open up the phone lines. Let's get this open. 763-260-1333. 763-260-1333. Give us a call. Talk about anything in college football. Talk about your team. Talk about my spotlights on LSU, on Indiana, on Ohio State, on Georgia. We've done a spotlight on those teams. The next team we're going to do is the Houston Cougars. Second year in the Big 12. That's our next spotlight team. Buckle up. Okay, give us a call. What do you think's going to happen here? What do you think's going to happen? Are you Bill G? Holy smokes. Thank you for your incredible generosity to the channel once again. Wow. Bill G, you are hereby cloak and dagger knighted. Thank you so much for your generosity. To Master, Kyle Visser, Crab Cakes and Football, BR7062, and Joe Peck. All five of you, please thank Bill G for his incredible generosity. You five are hereby cloak and dagger knighted. And what that means is you all members of the channel watch our Cloak and Dagger membership only episodes.
Rocket.
You are on the line. I didn't get your name.
Hey, Greg, it's Rock and Rant. How are you?
Rock and Rant, Mr. Hurricane. Can you hold on 1 second, please?
Absolutely.
Again, Bill G, thank you for your incredible generosity of those gift memberships once again. I do appreciate it, Bill G, very much. Alan Tran, I don't think LSU is great, Greg. I've got them number 8, but I have them as the weakest number 8 in the history of number 8s. Rock and Rant, let me have it. What did I get wrong today? What did I get right?
Oh, no. I don't think you have anything wrong today.
Okay, what's going on, sir?
There's just so much going on, so feel free to shut me up and cut me off or ask me questions so I don't do it, because I have like a shopping list. I need to go to the grocery store based on stuff that's happening. And first, in terms of the ACC agreeing to the deal and my shot at Jim Phillips, there's never a bad day to take a shot at Jim Phillips or any ACC commissioner. I understand the point that what else were they going to do that you made, which is 100% fair. There was nothing else to do, because it's not even in my view, a comparison between, hey, are you getting $13 million versus $27 million? It's the possibility of the dire outcome of, are you getting $13 million versus 0 or unknown, because the 1% chance or 10% chance of the breakaway happens sooner because the Power 2 don't get what they want. So I get that point, but that's one of those things in my mind where he's complicit, following up on Jim Swafford's complicity in getting to this point, either by being naive, alliance, extending TV deals they didn't have the rights to do without the proper voting. So it's the inevitable outcome of pure and utter incompetence as he's in court with his conference. And, I'm not a Florida State person, but I like to be factual in this kind of conversation where he's telling everybody how valuable the ACC is and how great they are, trying to sue one of their members without even getting the proper authorization. And then on the flip side, basically getting all the presidents to agree because they have no choice to sign their life away and make the competitive balance even worse than the ESPN TV deal makes it as we head into the future years. So, I don't disagree with you on that, but Jim Phillips having no choice now is the byproduct of bad choices before that led to, do you get shot or do you get knifed? Either way, you're going to be dead.
Yeah, let me just break in a second. Yeah, you know what? I might not. I probably misspoke. When I said Jim Phillips, there's nothing that he could have done in this regard to the CFP. That's true, but I think he made a major mistake when it come to extending the deadline for ESPN. Right? Extended that
Absolutely.
deadline to February 1st, 2025. The deadline for ESPN to make a decision on whether they're going to carry ACC content from 2027 beyond. Jim Phillips did not get the votes on that. I think that it is a major error. With that and other things within the court case that we've seen with the motions and the complaints, I think FSU has a pretty good chance in Mecklenburg County to where that judge, he might just stay it, dismiss it, and then we're going to go back to Leon County, and I think Florida State might get home field advantage. They've got a shot. Florida State has got they've got a shot. They're in the door. They're in the game on this. Jim Phillips made a horrific mistake on that.
Absolutely. I mean, they now, from everything we can tell, and to some degree we're reading tea leaves, but some of this is not really, right? They have at least violated their own bylaws twice that we know of. One was in extending a TV deal up to the option that they have right now that you just talked about without getting a 2/3 vote, and seemingly not having gotten 2/3 votes to approve the lawsuit against a member before it happened, as opposed to whatever rumors of things afterwards were the case. To that, and then going back to someone's comment, and I don't know this is the case, it'd be great if somebody else knows, in terms of FSU maybe not having a vote on the playoffs. I obviously don't know that specifically, but I do know that the only way that a member in the ACC could be removed from a vote would be if they've been suspended or notice of withdrawal. So
Yeah.
if they didn't have, if FSU did not have a vote, that means for certain that they're not suspended, they're not on probation, they're not in any of those categories that would remove them from a voting process. That means the ACC is treating FSU as of having given notice to leave the conference, which is a gray version of FSU, from what I understand. I think you can confirm, or Jen can comment, and they're actually still in the chat. FSU saying that if we are proven to be being right, then let our notice of withdrawal go retroactive back to the year. So, like, I don't know if this is a shades of gray thing, and if the ACC is treating it as such that FSU has already given that withdrawal, then yes, they would have been not part of a vote. Like, they could be excluded in that case. Other than that, if they were excluded, then they would be, again, breaking their own bylaws.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the other thing I think is interesting is you're essentially, and no one's infallible, so you could be wrong or whatever, you're essentially telling everyone consistently, without saying it in bold black and white, that North Carolina, Miami, Clemson, and FSU are all going to be in the P2. And you can disagree about the reasons, you could think it's a crock, but you're essentially explaining that. Now, that may not mean that all of them are going to go for 25, 26, 27. You know, it could be staggered. Like, who knows how it all plays out. But the scenario that that's not going to happen is extremely unlikely. I want to give a biased or some perspective on, hey, Miami's going to go to the Big 12. Miami's not going to the Big 12 unless a dramatic thing happens, which is either ACC lost TV deal completely, they lost access. Those are the only real scenarios that would happen. One, I don't think that's going to be the case because I don't think Miami's going to get left out of the P2 like you're alluding to. But if that were to happen in Jen's biggest fantasy, that they were going to the Big 12, I don't think they would go to the Big 12 over $5 million difference in an ACC deal or $10 million difference. And I don't think that then Clemson would go. They would just reconstitute, and Miami, Clemson, whoever, North Carolina State would, if they still had access, would keep playing in a diminished conference. Miami in particular, because there's literally no cultural, and not like who's better or best, affinity for, if you think Miami has a hard time drawing right now, try putting a schedule with Kansas State coming in and Oklahoma State, as opposed to at least East Coast rivals that there's a history with over Big East time and ACC. So I don't really ever see that unless the ACC didn't reconstitute itself if they didn't get a P2 deal. But if it just totally collapsed, that's the only way I could see that happen. I don't even think Miami would leave if there was a $10 million difference between what the ACC got and the Big 12 got, if there was, still access, because they'd still like to be, the academic side would probably balance out of being with more like-minded schools, not to take any shots at the Big 12 schools, which are all great schools as well. I'm just talking about a perception probably within the Miami administration.
Yeah.
And then I do have a take on the lawsuit timing for Clemson. This is not at all Florida State needed to do what Florida State needed to do on its own timeline, right? And doing what is best for them, and they figure that out. And that doesn't make their decision right or wrong versus Clemson's not doing it right now. But if you step back from it, whether planned and really strategic or accidental, Clemson's in a much better place now to file, now that they've let a few tea leaves all drop, right? All things have happened. Now you know exactly what the difference is in the college football playoff. Now you've seen multiple rounds of amendments and discovery. Them filing after April is not really going to fundamentally change the timeline for their possible escape versus going in your late January, early February. If anything, they have a better case to file. They have a lot more information. And long as, if they wanted to get up for 2025, whether they filed in January or early February or file on April 15th, they still can make that exit notice for 2025 if they have a landing, or if they thought 2026, they still have plenty of time to do it. And based on all the things that are going on, if someone asked me, put a $100 bet on, will the shakeout of who's going where going to happen? Well, we all know that's this year, or maybe even by August 15th, even if some teams go in 2025 and some go in 2027, I think we'll know the whole ACC crumbling of the cookie, even if it's a staggered timeline, possibly before this season kicks off, but almost certainly before the end of the year, because it's just too wild. There's too much going on. There's too many rumblings. There's too many stories all coming together. So I think they were pretty smart, actually, to wait, even if their first inkling might have been to come very quickly, and that's the information you got. If you think about it in a pure level, they're in a much better place to file now.
Yeah. All right, man. I appreciate rocking around. I'll make some comments off when I do have some breaking news that I got to get to, but I appreciate the call, sir.
All right, Greg. Have a great weekend.
I agree with you, sir. Thank you so very much. Great call. I got to get to something here, guys. I agree. Look. I haven't kept it a secret. Miami's going to have a good opportunity. Nothing's for sure. We don't have a crystal ball. We can peek around the corner here, but they do have a pretty good opportunity. There is interest, the Big Ten. There is interest from Fox Sports. And when we said that Fox Sports was interested in Oregon, I got hammered. When I said Fox Sports said interest in Miami, I got a little bit hammered. People don't quite hammer me quickly as they used to. But so Miami's going to have a good opportunity. But let me get to the breaking story. We did an early peak Cloak and Dagger membership episode, I don't know, a couple weeks ago. In one of those episodes, we reported to you all on a Cloak and Dagger, giving you a little bit of nugget information, that we were under the belief that there was going to be a different tier of playoff distribution money for the G5 conferences. There hasn't been any public reporting on that since we gave out that little nugget on Cloak and Dagger episode. Just now, CBS Sports is reporting the following. They don't say much, but I think I'm going to add in the details here. The group of five will split 9% of the contract, but the number may not be split evenly among the teams in 5 conferences. The independent schools will split 1%, while Notre Dame will get the bulk at around $12 million. The group of five, this is CBS Sports. This just came out during Rock and Rant's phone call to PATC. The number may not be split evenly among the teams in the 5 G5 conferences. Now, we reported this a couple weeks ago. The split among the G5 is the Mountain West and the AAC believe that they should be in the same tier, and then the MAC, the Sun Belt, and the Conference USA be in the second tier of G5. It's interesting. Now it says it may. Again, it may happen, it may not happen. We were told that this very well could happen, to look out for it. Liberty was the Conference USA champion. They were the best G5, highest rank last year. The year before that was Tulane, AAC. The Mountain West is going to be having a material realignment. They're going to be adding Oregon State, Washington State, and they're going to might be called the Mountain West. They might be called the Pac. Whatever they're going to be called, they're going to be on a higher level. So I would bet that this is going to happen. That the Mountain West and the AAC are going to get a little bit more money in college football playoff revenue. Again, not being reported. Now, this CBS, they just reported it. This was an article that came out 13 minutes ago. 13 minutes ago, CBS Sports, David Cobb, right there. So keep your head on a swivel when it comes to that information. And when you're talking about one G5 best, highest ranked conference champion getting a playoff bid, the G5 war is just only begun. They've got more at stake than ever before. There was a show, I'm not going to name the name, but there was some college football YouTube show this morning that titled their show, G5 Conferences Have Been Destroyed, or something like that. The destruction of the G5. Are you kidding me? For the first time ever, they have an established playoff access. 24, 25, 26 to 2031. G5 haven't been destroyed. It's just bizarre. Are they getting the increase that the others? No, because they don't have the leverage. But they do have access. And so anyways, during this G5 war, with one highest ranked G5 school conference champion going to the playoffs, you got Washington State and Oregon State. They're going to be building a G5 conference. Will they take all the Mountain West schools? Will they just take 6 of them? Will they take 4 of them and take a couple of the ACC? Whatever is generated there could be the top level G5 conference. I don't know if they take all the Mountain West schools. So that is a big storyline that we're going to be covering. They don't really need to. I know that sounds cutthroat, but they don't really need to. They just need to be an 8-member conference to qualify for their champion to be the highest rated G5 to make it to the playoffs. So, anyways, we're going to see some action in the G5 here. The G5 wars, we're calling it here at Peek Around the Corner. I did not say that. You said it to Mazda. I just saw the title of that show and I'm like, I don't know. Bizarre. Uh, Disrespectful to the Fun Belt. Well, the Sun Belt, yeah, that's a good. I mean, the Sun Belt is rising, right? But again, maybe the two-tier G5, if it happens, the two-tier G5 playoff money, where the Mountain West and the ACC get the top, and then the Sun Belt, the MAC, and the Conference USA are the three bottom. If that happens, maybe it occurred because of Washington State and Oregon State. Maybe that was part of the negotiations in regards to Washington State president acquiescing to make the change from a 6+6 model to a 5+7 for 24 and 25. Maybe that was part of the give and take back and forth. Whatever that G5 conference, whatever that gets created, the Mountain West, whatever that's get created, they're going to be a little bit of a tier higher than some of the other G5 conference. Just speculation on my okay, we're going to open up the phone lines again. 763-260-1333. If you've just come on in, breaking news, it's signed, sealed, and delivered. The playoffs are established somewhat. Revenue distribution is established for the most part. Maybe some questions around the G5 conferences, as we just reported with breaking news from CBS Sports. We did a spotlight team. We talked about LSU for the 2024 season, and I am all over the place on LSU. I am all over the place on LSU. Okay, let me get your comments. The phone lines are open. If you're new to the show, or if you haven't done so yet, please hit the subscribe button. Get your notifications on to our YouTube channel. We can come on it live at any time, late at night, lunchtime, early in the morning. So have your notifications on and smash the like button if you like our content. Who wants to watch Liberty in a bowl game? Well, enough people do watch those bowl games. Those bowl games make money. They make money for the sponsorship, for the media company, for ESPN. Those bowl games make money. And they got a really good quarterback coming back next year, Salter. Liberty's going to be right there again, battling for the top-rated G5 spot. They've got a great quarterback. Now, they got whooped against Oregon. Ryan Willie, Monty does clickbait. He's not a serious person. Thank you for the super chat. Mr. Evil Badger, Ryan Willie, thank you so much again for your generosity. Thank you so very much. Jay Chapman, how much longer with the good coaches? Mike Gundy, Whittingham. Well, Whittingham's not going anywhere. He's going to stay at Utah until he retires. Mike Gundy, man, he might stay there as well. Right? Might stay there as well. Let me see if I've missed anything here. I'm going to go check the reporting that's going on. Again, breaking news with CBS Sports. Breaking news with CBS Sports.
Call from
Steve.
Steve, the floor is yours, sir. How you doing?
Good. How are you, Greg?
I'm doing good.
Good. Let's don't lose sight of one simple fact here, that everyone from the G5 through the other conferences, the other 4 conferences, are going to be making the most money they've ever made in their existence off of college football.
Yep.
Texas Tech and Oklahoma State aren't refurbished. That's making improvements to their stadiums because they don't have the money to do it. If they didn't have the money to do it, they wouldn't be doing it.
Yeah.
Cincinnati's not building a state-of-the-art athletic facility on campus for millions and millions if they didn't have the money to do it. They're going to have the money to do it. Is the gap going to be wider than it's probably ever been? Sure it is. I know my wife and I have a budget monthly.
Yeah.
And I know that Jerry Jones, the owner of the Cowboys, probably has a monthly budget. His is a hell of a lot higher than mine.
Yeah.
But somehow you figure it out.
Yeah.
You figure it out. Simple as that.
Yeah.
The other thing is where I'm going to disagree a little bit about Miami. I'm going to do it for a few reasons, and part of it is what I've observed being in Florida. The fans are either Seminoles, Gators, Knights, Hurricanes, and somewhat the Bulls over in South Florida. There's a lot of transplanted people down here.
Yeah.
I just feel like Miami's in a situation, depending on what Notre Dame decides to do and how many teams the SEC decides to take,
Yeah.
that Miami may get squeezed out. And getting back to what I've observed down here is I just ran off the 5 schools that basically have the most eyeballs on them in the state of Florida. And quite frankly, if Miami's in the Big Ten, they have a home game, are there going to be 20,000, and they play, let's say they play Illinois. There are going to be 20,000 Illinois transplants that are going to make a trek to Joe Robbie to watch that game?
Good question.
I will tell you flat out, Greg, from what I've observed, that's a resounding no.
Okay.
Because of the demographics. Because of straight out the demographics in Florida. Now, does Fox want them? Sure they want them. Fox wouldn't mind putting Miami and Illinois on the Big Ten network at 7 o'clock. Sure they want them.
Yeah.
Let me bring up this point. Would Fox want them on the cheap and share them with ESPN if they go to the Big 12?
Yeah, I think yes. I think whatever happens, whatever schools in the ACC are successful in getting out of the ACC and landing in the Big Ten and the SEC, I think they're coming in as mainly as a discount, like Washington and Oregon.
Sure.
Because the Big Ten and the SEC are going to have leverage.
Yep. And I'm not making.
And if there's a big enough implosion, then the Big 12 is going to have leverage. So
yeah, and I'm not bringing this in about Miami because I think they should go to the Big 12. I don't want anybody thinking that. It's what I've observed here in the years I've lived here. There's a big demographic of people in Florida in October and November who would rather go out on the golf course on Saturday afternoon than watch college football. It's that simple. Other than the alumni of the schools I mentioned, or the fan bases of the schools I've mentioned. And the other thing is about the Miami DMA is the number of televisions. There's less, and that again goes along with demographic lines. Now, I'm not discrediting anybody that's saying Fox would take Miami in a heartbeat, but I guarantee you, Fox would take Notre Dame and Florida State before they'd take Florida State and Miami.
I'm sorry, repeat that last one.
Fox would take Notre Dame and Florida State
Yeah.
well over taking Florida State and Miami.
Yes, yeah. And they would take Notre Dame and Florida State over just about every combination, except for maybe Notre Dame and North Carolina. But maybe,
yeah. You got to put that in there for sure. But I'm just not sure that Miami's a slam dunk if Notre Dame decides, looking around and saying, we better do something, And I think, and as you have stated, that day's coming closer every day. You got to believe it is. Even though if they're going to get what basically the ACC is getting for playoff money, they still want to stay within reach of the Big Ten or the SEC. Well, how do you solve that problem? Once Florida State decides we're out of here, once Clemson decides we're out of here, once Carolina decides we're out of here, what's Notre Dame do? They say, well, we'll get out of the ACC and stay independent. Do you think that's the plan?
I don't know. I don't know, man. I don't know. Are you talking about the plan for Notre Dame?
Yeah.
I mean, I
if
think
they see it.
Yeah, they see everything we see, of course, but I think their plan right now is to watch what happens here on March 22nd, which is Friday.
Yeah.
And
a week from today.
Yeah, and I think we're gonna know what we'll probably get some sort of judge issuing some sort of call on that probably the following Monday, Tuesday, or Wednesday. So those are going to be big days. Big days.
Do you think that judge is going to? I mean, obviously he's privy to most of the information from both sets of attorneys. Do you think he could take the attitude and say, "Hey, I've got other things in my courtroom to worry about"? You know what I'm saying, Greg?
Yeah.
Why am I sat here deciding this?
But the court, I don't know how this all works, but the court system there is like the business court. So this is the type of stuff that they deal with. That type of judge, I guess. So I don't know.
Yep. And it depends on what connections the judge got to the Board of Governors in Carolina. Don't ever let that escape the whole thing. So anyhow, that's my 2 cents worth, Greg.
All right, I appreciate it, Bearcat Steve. Great call once again.
By the way,
Thorsby
number 10. I'm deeply disappointed in you.
Who?
Thorsby.
Yeah, did I have him at 10?
I'm really disappointed. No, I'm just kidding you. Kidding you.
All right, beautiful. Okay. Thank you, sir.
All right, see ya.
Did I have Thorsby at 10? I thought I had him at 9 or something. I'll take a look at it. A lot of good quarterbacks in the Big 12. A lot of good quarterbacks in the Big 12. Thorsby, I think, is going to be one of them. Grateful Trojan, Greg, how much pressure did the Big 10 put on University of Minnesota to be able to state him and get out of the Metrodome? Miami has a similar issue. I think there's a ton of similarities between Minnesota and Miami. They are pro markets, big markets. Now, Minnesota's demographics, they're not transplants. Minnesota people have been here forever. But the Vikings are huge. It's a state of hockey. That dome, that when the Gophers played in the dome, that just added to all the disadvantages Minnesota already had. It was just another. It was so bad. I'm telling you guys, watching the Minnesota Golden Gopher game in the Metrodome, it was so bad. You know what? I don't recall if there was pressure that the Big Ten put on Minnesota. But the pressure within Minnesota was huge. And thankfully, during that time when they built the stadium, the state of Minnesota was sitting on a big surplus. Economically, the state of Minnesota have been sitting on big surpluses a lot here in the last 20 some years. Lot of economic growth in the state, especially when you compare it to the Midwest. Very the state has a lot of variety of economic interests. Just the state itself, geography is so widely different from each other. What's going on in the west of Minnesota, going on in the south, there's a whole bunch of different things going on in Minnesota. And that has led to economic prosperity when other places in the Midwest have been hit hard. So the state of Minnesota we were able to build that stadium. It's a beautiful stadium. It's perfect for the football program. Now, the University of Minnesota still owes like $200 million on that. Maybe it's below 200. If it is, I don't think it's much below. They pay a debt, they service the debt on that every year. And that's part of their expenses. Whatever Minnesota does, what a lot of programs do, whatever leftover money they have at the end of the year, whatever surplus they have, they take all that surplus and they spend it to service the debt. That's why when you watch YouTube channels and people talking about how there's only 5 or 6 schools, athletic departments that make money in the season, in the year, it's not really the case. In the Big Ten and the SEC, and there's probably, some in the Big 12 and the ACC as well, but the reason why you see expenses matching revenue, why it's either exactly the same or just a little bit off, is that you take whatever you have in revenue surplus of that year and you just spend it on servicing the debt, because the quicker you pay down the servicing the debt, the more money you make in the long run. So University of Minnesota, even though Ohio State, way over $200 million in revenue, way over $200 million in expenditures. They're paying off their debts a lot quicker. And that's going to help Ohio State in the long run. So be careful when you got to drill down to the... Anyways, enough of that. But anyways, Tony says the University of Minnesota lobbied hard to get an on-campus stadium. It was just awful. It hurt a football program that didn't really need to be hurt anymore. It was terrible. Hopefully for Miami Hurricane fans, the fan base, the university, the athletic department, hopefully they can build an on-campus stadium. And if they get in the SEC and the Big Ten, that's going to build momentum, and I think that's going to get done. Just my opinion. I do want to put out here, let me put out here real quick. Heather Dinich says the CFP is still negotiating with ESPN. We are encouraged about the position we are in. We still have work to do. Hancock said there will be a path for Oregon State, Washington State to compete in the CFP this year and next year as independent programs, right? Oregon State and Washington State are going to be regarded as independent football programs. It's unclear what happens after that and how. Well, because Oregon State and Washington State are going to be building up a G5 conference. Either taking the whole of the Mountain West, part of the Mountain West, creating a Frankenstein conference, taking the top of the AAC teams, maybe even taking top of, maybe even taking maybe a complete Frankenstein conference. A couple from the Sun Belt even. We don't know. Hancock said there's no urgency to format conversations for 26 and beyond. There's no urgency because ESPN is good at what the CFP did. That whole thing is going to happen. And then the Big Ten and the Big Ten and the SEC, they carry the power. They're going to decide. And the Big 12 and the ACC and the G5, they are protected. There is no urgency on that. We'll find out when we find out. Again, today is going to be our last day talking about the CFP as the main story. Right? We've been covering it daily. We digged into it like nobody's business here at College Football Peek Around the Corner. But we are at the end of the story, the great gold rush of 2026. Big Dog Daddy, thank you for the super chat. Thank you for your generosity once again to our channel. I appreciate it so very much. Thank you so much. So we're going to be closing it down here. We've been on the air probably not 2 hours, but we're going to be doing a shorter. We might come on live later tonight. We're going to continue to do spotlight teams throughout next week. Houston Cougars is the next team we're going to spotlight. We're going to cover the country. We're going to cover every team throughout this off season. We're in the spring practices. And then, of course, Florida State. Florida State, the Seminoles, Mecklenburg County, March 22nd, this Friday. We're going to be on live Friday, March 22nd. We're going to be covering the whole shebang. So stick with us here at Peek Around the Corner. If you haven't done so, if you haven't done it yet, please hit the subscribe button. Open up your notifications. Smash that like button if you liked our content today. I appreciate the wonderful donations that help us keep the lights on here at Peek Around the Corner. Bill G and everybody buying more gift memberships to everybody. I appreciate that. More and more members are joining constantly here at Peek Around the Corner. We dropped a very significant early Peek Cloak and Dagger episode yesterday. Go find the one that we talked about, a potential couple tiers in G5 when it comes to CFP playoff distribution. We reported that on one of those Cloak and Dagger episodes. So become a member. If you want to become a member, go down to the link provided in the description box. Hit the link button and then hit the join button and become a Cloak and Dagger early Peek member of the show. I do appreciate you all coming in, the wonderful chats, the wonderful phone calls. And again, I bring this up every once in a while. When it comes, I appreciate all you guys. I always end my live shows and my episodes saying, please, you all take great care of each other. I mean that greatly. I bring this up every 3 months on one of my shows. A ship in harbor is safe, but that is not what ships are built for. John A. Shedd, 1928. A ship in harbor is safe, but that is not what ships are built for. So when I say please take care of each other, I mean that. However, go live your lives. Make sure you take your ship out to the middle of the ocean. Dream big, do big things, and I think that's what life is all about. Plus, taking care of each other. Until next time, from all of us at PATC, to all of you, please, you all take great care of each other.